Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Launchpad's Pick and Mix podcast. And today we've got someone who you may not know, but you should definitely know, Liz Barratt. And we have been giggling like small children offline about how we met, how often we've met, how little we've met, and yet how deeply connected I feel to this woman, and how deeply safe I feel. Being vulnerable about this lady, and we'll tell you a bit more about what she does, and then it won't be a surprise to you how and why I feel that way. So, Liz, tell the audience, who are you? What do you do? What's your current role?
So I am Director of Adult Learning at Transform Trust. So we are 28 primary schools in the East Midlands, and I lead on all things leadership, CPD and teaching and learning development. And I also am coaching lead for the National Society for Education as part of the Church of England.
Amazing. And we met through the Church of England work. We're both working on their Flourishing Leaders course. And I think we met on a boat, didn't we, first time?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
weird, wasn't it? That was very trendy. I'm like, I'm not that trendy, but it was, hey, we're having a meeting on a boat. And I was like, oh, this is what the cool kids do, is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But so talk about the before then, though. Teacher at some point?
Yeah, so I was a teacher for 20 odd years. I'm a secondary teacher, geography. Started off in Durham, moved to Nottingham City, and then senior leader, CPD lead, teaching and learning lead in the city of Nottingham. I did that at the same time as working in skit and doing freelance work and working for a teaching school in terms of coaching development and supporting them in that. So lots of different things at the same time.
Yeah, nice. And if you missed it before, so Liz does, well, she leads on the coaching side of things for the whole kind of, National Institute of Church of England stuff. And so that's really the link between, I think, why she, and again, she's way too modest to say this, but just in the way that she is around people, I think gives an indication to how good a coach she is and what she knows about coaching, and why I think, without her even trying, I felt instantly sort of connected and able to, spill my guts about all my woes. I think I probably owe her about 500 quid in therapy, but she ain't getting it back. So tough luck. Anyway, let's learn a bit more about you then. So, if you're new to the podcast, we have a series of different elements that make up the kind of hour, and all really aimed at trying to get below the surface and to find out a bit more about the person behind some of the cool stuff you might have seen online or experienced. And so, the first thing we do is what we call a fast friends question. And the idea is that these are questions that are aimed to create connection because they potentially uncover things that somebody might not have shared before, but also they might find some common ground. And so the guests get to choose, and Liz is already smiling about this one because she chose for the first one. If you could wake up tomorrow having gained any one quality or ability, what would it be? So tell us about that.
Okay, so this is all about impulse control, and I would absolutely love to have a stronger pause button.
Love that.
So in my kind of wider life and my professional life, I know you've got that beautiful spot between something happening and how you choose to respond and react. And I would love for that to be stronger, longer, to give me that space to really deliberately make my choices. I talk a lot about what's a deliberate choice here, where we're going, but my impulse control is not a strong aspect that I have. So I do know that when I'm at my best, when I'm flourishing, that's strong. But I also know that when I'm tired or I'm just surviving, that is a risk. So if I were to wake up tomorrow with that, I would see that as a superpower.
Oh man, I love that. And that will resonate with lots of people. And actually, recently I've been talking quite a lot about the idea of stimulus response and the gap
Yes.
between them. And I think that, you might have just given me another launch pad, that stronger, longer space between stimulus and response.
Absolutely.
That's nice. That might, yeah. And of course, I think something else you hit on there, which is super important for leaders, is that typically that space naturally get smaller under times of stress.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
true?
Yeah, I think so because I think the pressure you put on yourself to have an answer or to make a decision or even that emotional regulation that's required to
Yeah.
stop can get small. I mean, I think your cognitive load, you've got less of that. So I'm constantly trying to work on kind of my deliberate practice around that to
Yeah.
lengthen it. I think you're right. When you're tired or you're busy or that's when the risk is greater. So
And the other thing that springs to mind is that I think it's probably a misconception that leaders have. I certainly had it when I was, well, probably not even still have it, around that people think highly of you if you can make a quick decision, and that they don't think highly of you if you take a pause and give a considered response. It's probably the opposite, do you think?
I absolutely agree. I think seeking first to understand, your original cover stuff, like what
Yeah.
do I need to know in order to make a really rigorous, thorough, good decision as opposed to a really quick decision. I
Yeah.
think you respect people who do that.
I think you're
You
right.
don't always need, yeah, you don't always need a quick answer. You need
No,
to the right questions. Yeah, I agree.
you're probably a bit. Yeah, and I wonder whether I doubt the sincerity and the depth of thought that goes into kind of knee jerk answers. Certainly true if you go to interview, I suppose. Although there is a sweet spot, I suppose, isn't there? Like, uh, let me have another think. Could you repeat that question? Can I make some notes? That might be a little bit too extreme.
Yeah, I think it's about like what enables people to trust you and what
Yeah.
enables you to trust yourself. And I think that's the sweet spot because you want to be credible and
Hmm.
you want to, you will have thoughts in your head, but actually making that right decision. Or sometimes going back and saying I was wrong on that.
Yeah.
Actually, I've rethought about it. This is where I now stand. I think that can wobble people, but I think it's significant.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, there we go. A pause button. Do you want? Is it going to be like on a remote control, or what? How do you activate this pause?
I've not gone there. I just want it within me.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I didn't know
implanted.
whether you wanted a volume control as well. You could turn people down,
I think my husband would want that. Yeah,
turn them
yeah.
off. That would be a funny thing. What other buttons? But let's not get into what other buttons are on the controller. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your first ignition point again for people that are
Okay.
new to this. We tend to kind of want to talk about key events or people or things that have happened that have shaped. How did you get to that sort of amazing place that you're in at the moment? And the first one that Liz has chosen is post maternity focus. So tell us a bit about what happened there.
Yeah, so I was a teacher, I was a leader in a school, and after I'd had my daughter, it gave me that space to really think about what I cared about, what I was good at, what I wanted to do. And I realised at that point, I really saw the impact and significance of coaching. And I've been really lucky prior to my maternity leave to work with someone called Tamba Roy, who was this just really inspirational ex-head teacher who worked in coaching, and he coached me and he
Right.
coached my team, and so I'd had this really first-hand experience of really transformative conversation. And so I think the space I had when I was kind of away from work made me really realise that was the thing that deeply mattered to me.
Right.
And so, of course, I went away and I read about it and I taught myself and I learned. And I thought, what does this look like? And I think I started with a Groupon voucher to
Okay.
go
Nice.
do randomly to a really like to a coaching course. And I looked at that and then I thought I'm really brave. And I went back to school and I spoke to my head and I said, this is what I want to do. And this is the thing that I think I'd be great at. And she said yes,
Wow.
and yeah, it's great. And so it was a big decision. I went down to 2 days. I dropped a significant salary,
Yeah.
and I just worked it out. And we worked it out, and I practiced, and I practiced, and I practiced, and yeah, and I think that was the ignition point. I
Yeah.
think it was a person, Tamba. I
Yeah.
think it was a space, and I think it was a prayer decision, and it was someone believing in me, and that just expanded my thinking about what I could be and what I could do.
That's really interesting because there's a little bit of a parallel there, isn't it? You finding space and making a better decision. Um, and yeah, that's really, I guess that's one of the dangers, isn't it, at the moment in the way that we are working in education and certainly in leadership is that there either isn't a lot of space or people aren't brave enough, proactive enough, disciplined enough to make the space. Um, what's your thoughts on that about, how could leaders create that space rather than just getting pregnant?
I think there's a personal permission that
Right.
is required. I think there's something about giving yourself permission to. It's the pause point again, right?
Yeah.
It's creating the space in order to choose rather than reacting. So there's something about personal permission. I trust that stopping. It's scary.
Yeah.
Change is scary. Space is scary. It's easy just to keep head down doing. But I'm going to create this space to make a choice. I think there's not feeling judged by the people, that by slowing down and stopping and choosing and changing is not going to look weird,
Yeah.
potentially. I think that there's an urgency that we feel, there's a bias that we live, an action bias around doing as opposed to thinking. And I think all these things together, the perhaps is a guilt, a
Yeah.
huge guilt around stopping, just to make space for yourself, to invest in yourself, to think about what's best. And I think all these things together stop us from doing it. But I
Yeah.
think the act of creating that space and stepping into that space, like that is where the beauty comes from. You kind of gotta do it
So
and be
great.
great.
I mean, that phrase, personal permission, that's powerful. Give yourself permission to, yeah, to privilege yourself, sort of thing. Again, lots of themes coming out recently in the chats I've been having with people, but that idea of, private victories before, public ones, about taking care of yourself before you can take care of others. And also that, again, link back to that idea of you may think that your followers, for want of a better word, would look down on you for, I don't know, protecting some time. But, you know, where the greatest role models aren't we as leaders? If it's a behavior that you want in others, you have to model it yourself. But also, I guess you're probably judged on the outputs. Like in my mind now, I'm running a little, scenario where I say to people, "Yeah, I don't do meetings on whatever day at whatever time because you know, that's my thinking space or whatever." And that initial like, what? But then
Mm.
the output being much, much greater work and much bigger impact, and then they go, "Oh, hang on a minute. There's a couldn't." He started doing that, and then his outputs become higher quality. Damn it! Right. Take the whole week off, Chris. No, not so
I
much.
think you're right, Chris. And I think there's something there about like what's the narrative of that.
Yeah.
So you are reframing the narrative to purposeful practice. So
Mm,
you're saying, I'm doing this because the impact will be my choices in order that. And
yeah.
that is a very, very different narrative to an apology or to a I'm sorry that.
Yeah.
It's strong and it builds the confidence. And like you say, it models to other people that it's not just okay, it's going to actually bring better out
Yeah.
impact. And then being able to narrate that afterwards
Yeah.
by doing this, look what we've achieved. I just think it consolidates it as a
Yeah. I
choice.
love that. I'm reading a book listening to a book at the moment
Yeah.
called Why We Sleep.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Matthew Walker, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a fascinating bit in it about obviously about sleep, about 8 hours and all that stuff. And I found myself saying, not recently, but in the years before, I can get away with 7 hours of sleep. And I didn't realize the danger that lies in that I'm getting away with, and so a similar sort of thing, isn't it? Like I'm getting away with my current work schedule,
Yeah.
but I don't know if the goal should be getting away with life. People don't want you on the fringes the whole time. If by getting away with stuff, you're an 8 on the quality scale, if I suddenly started getting 8 hours sleep, would I be on the 9 and the 10? Any reflections on that?
Yeah. I think we have this phrase at work, which is, what does it look like to be at your best? And what
Uh,
does it look like to be at your best together? Right? So that's kind of
Ooh,
our stock underpinning.
yeah,
And do we know? And do we have practices in order to choose to do that? And then for your idea of actually knowing, actually, for me to thrive, for me to flourish, for me to be at my best, I need 9 hours.
yeah,
And that is going to enable X, Y, Z versus I can cope on, or I
yeah,
will survive on, or I'll be just okay on. No one wants that. Like, no one wants that. Like you say, like, like we don't want that for our children in our classes. We
oh,
don't want that for our adults in our school. I don't want that for me. I don't want that
yeah,
for you. So actually, what are the what's optimum? What is going to allow us to be at our best? And are we aware of that? And so I think there's something there about I always use the word choice, but self-awareness, making choices and saying, actually, is that allowable? Is
yeah,
actually that something I want to focus on or not? I think there's something really significant in that. And I think there's something also significant in sharing that with others, because then
yeah,
they can join you in
yeah.
that work to help you and to be, to develop that collective responsibility and
I knew
empathy.
this was going to happen. I knew that we were going to like derail the whole damn schedule by me and you chatting, because now I'm thinking about that idea of I mean, for those who don't do a lot of coaching, there's a word called contracting, which if you're into coaching, you'll be familiar with. And again, that idea of having contracting conversations just with anybody and just saying, this is me, this is how I work best.
It's so significant. We talk about strategic contracting at the
Right,
beginning and then kind of operational contracting. So you
right.
top up contracting.
Yeah,
So
nice.
there's something about like being unapologetic. Again, it's that creating space thing. Being unapologetic to create the space to talk about the things, the social contracts, the enablers, the
Yeah,
things, the mitigating the risks. That might feel indulgent and that might feel like a luxury. It's not a luxury. I mean, you talk in your book, don't you, about the pre-mortem? That
yeah,
is such a significant thing to do because it builds relationships, it develops understanding, it enables you to choose, to respond, and it enables your leadership. So I'm unapologetic about that, creating that space
yeah.
because that just still builds your foundations, right?
I love it. And it's timely, I suppose, for when this goes out because it'll be probably September before we see it. And for those of you that are got new people in your team or you've got a new line manager, never a better time really at the beginning of the relationship just to say, let's just take a bit of time to kind of understand each other a bit more. And then, I mean, the amount of times I've been vulnerable and expected a negative result and it hasn't happened is massive. And so it may feel weird to say it out loud, um, but I don't think you'll get a negative response. You might get a bit of, oh, I've never talked about that before. And you might not reap the rewards till later on, but there'll definitely be some rewards. Okay, well, let's get stuck into your first kind of launch pad. Again, it's just in case anyone's new to the podcast that this whole thing comes about because of the book on the shelf, this leadership launch pads, which is effectively a collection of infographics and what we call booster pages aimed at just stirring something, getting people to think a bit deeper. And we ask guests to choose two of these that resonate with them. So I'll just talk you through this one, where I was when I was thinking about it, and then we'll ask Liz about why it resonated with her. And this first one is about challenging conversations. And I've tried to push Liz on this a little bit because I think she might have, a different perspective and maybe something to add to this. So the story behind this is it's called Leaping Through Challenging Conversations. And this idea that for me at least, challenging conversations are often stressful. There's usually quite a lot of importance applied to them, and they're usually very complex. And so those three things usually mean that I don't know. Sometimes I do them well. Sometimes I don't do them well. It's not as wild as it used to be, but like years ago, it was wildly different. Some days I'd be great at it, and other days I'd be absolutely terrible. And because I was making it up as I was going along, I didn't have any structure to that at all. I wasn't going in with any approach. I was just like, oh, I need to have a chat, and they might get annoyed at some point. And so anyway, I thought to myself, now I know that I'm being inconsistent. What could I do to be less inconsistent? Okay, and a bit like a coaching model, I suppose. You you want some structure, but you don't want it to be too complicated that you are overly fixated. And now that I know about cognitive biases, I'm very aware that this was the first one that I came across that I liked. So there's lots of biases in there around. It was the first framework I found, and I liked it. So with that as a disclaimer, too, there are lots of other acronyms on the market, probably better ones. But on a serious note, there is something to be said, I think, for finding something that works for you and then not just constantly be looking for the newest, shiniest thing. So, this, what I'm about to explain now, has helped me be more consistent in my challenging conversations. They are better. And I suppose now that you brought this up today, I might have a rethink about whether I can make it 1% better. Anyway, so one of the things that I guess this thing does, and the LEAP is an acronym, the first one, fairly straightforward, is to listen. This idea that effectively the first thing you should be doing is listening, and then listening, and then listening some more. And I'm going to preface this initially on these kind of unplanned challenging conversations. So where the challenging conversations I used to have most often were with parents who arrived at reception angry about something. Reception would call someone from SLT. I would arrive on the scene and instantly be in a challenging conversation without any prior knowledge or anything. So my first thing was listen, 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 and then something I'm terrible at but better now, I guess, is the pause. That idea that a second someone takes a pause for breath, I am in there trying to figure. I mean, you're laughing now, but it's very true. So you've got to be really disciplined. And I randomly, it's a bit weird, but I used to pinch my finger behind my back as some sort of like physical signal of listen, listen, and almost allowing them. I'm much better now because of all the coaching I've done, but allowing the space and the awkward silence for them to fill. Um, then the LEAP acronym talks about empathizing, and this is where we start to get a bit dangerous. I think people want to feel heard. They want to feel like you acknowledge their issue, that you can see it from their perspective. I guess this is where it starts to get tricky in that if you do it disingenuously, it can have a negative impact. If people feel like you are, I don't know, being patronizing or something like that, that would be difficult. And there's also something worth talking about here about the length of these. There is no set length. You don't listen for 3 minutes, empathize for 3 minutes. It might be that a single comment like, wow, that does sound challenging, is enough for them to feel like you empathize. The next one is ask. And of course, we talked about this before. Your first instinct as a leader or anybody, parent, is to understand before you then, seek to be understood would be what Comey would say. So yes, he's just asking lots of questions really to get as much information as physically possible. There's that idea of, if doctors misdiagnose, then they mistreat. And so for us, if we don't collect enough information, we might just misdiagnose the problem, and then every action we take after that is probably in the wrong direction. Again, another tricky one, which I put in there, and sometimes it helps, sometimes it trips me up, is how can I help? Because potentially you open the door for sort of crazy demands, and you then put yourself into a corner because you have to say, well, no, I can't do that, which potentially reignites the flame. And then the last one, which again is this idea of collaboratively then trying to find a problem. So in the parental kind of scenario, it would be me saying, "Hi, I'm Mr. Baker. La la la. Did that? Tell me a bit more about what's going on," and then empathizing about how that sounds challenging, and then sort of asking them, "Okay, well, in order for me to help, can you tell me more about it?" And then also asking them more detail, and then saying, "Right, well, let's get on the same page, and I'm sure we both want the same thing. Let's talk together about how we could improve it." And so that was kind of helped me for a while. And then I started thinking with the Launchpad about how that might be different for planned challenging conversations. So if you're a leader in a line management role, you may find you have to manage underperformance or even sadly misconduct, which is super tricky. And so for me, it was more about kind of preparation. And the thing that helped me was really investing some time in preparing and where possible. And I don't mean evidence like, a research report. I mean, like if you're going to talk to someone about their attendance as your staff, you better have the data there to show them their attendance. This can't be all like it feels to me like you're late every day. That won't go down very well. And so there's that side of things, and then of course the unplanned one. I think the difference between the two is probably that I would spend a lot more time in the listening bit, just because I don't have any prior knowledge. Anyway, so that was my sort of thinking when I made it. But why did it resonate with you, Liz?
It resonated with me because this is probably the biggest request I have from leaders around their professional development and what they're frightened of and what they would like support with. So I really liked the simplicity of it, and I really enjoyed how accessible it was, and how it kind of got to the crux of what really matters in these situations. That concept of, like you said, seek to understand what is actually going on here. I think most sort of tricky conversations are actually three conversations in one.
Okay.
What actually happened? How do we both feel about it? And what are our identities in this?
Right.
And so actually, like really listening to understand what this conversation is actually about is often really helpful.
Yeah.
I think the E for empathy, I think that's really significant. I think you use the word that I like better, which is acknowledge.
Right.
And acknowledge, I hear that this is really hard. I see this feels that. Because I think there's often a risk that we kind of jump too deeply into empathy or sympathy, and that's what tracks us. But keeping the acknowledgement, the recognition, the hearing, really tight. Always check for understanding with teachers. We should be checking. We should be checking for understanding. We should be probing. We should be clarifying. We should be making sure we understand. And then the problem solve. And I like the language of we. What can we do? What can you do? Or what could be done here? Keep it in the passive voice. So what I loved about it was that it's underpinned by coaching mindset, and I hear what you say about how can I help. Maybe taking ownership away, but what could be done here? What are the options? What are the alternatives? So that's kind of what pulled me to it.
Nice. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? And I mean, I'm forever amazed about how just taking a coaching approach to conversation is frighteningly kind of useful. And whenever I do training with people about how to take a coaching approach, usually you see them looking to each other and say, "You're really good at that." Like most things, calling it the coaching approach was not the birth of those things. People have been listening really well and asking questions for forever, and some people are really good at it, and so they are taking a coaching approach without even knowing that it would be called. Yeah, fascinating. All right, well, let's get.
I'm just going to quickly say something that's really significant. Like a lot of my thinking and reading around this that has been really helpful for me is the reframing. So recognizing that you assume you're bringing truth to a conversation, but you actually bring a perspective. You bring in a perspective, and that allows you to hear the other person's perspective. and it's like moving from blame to contribution. So what
Right.
are we contributing here? Or we're moving from accusations into how do I feel about it? And I think there's something really significant around accountability as a leadership behaviour here. So, like, actually, what is happening here? How do we feel about this? What are our identities? But how do we genuinely get to the point of what is going on? So
Yeah.
it can be totally depersonalised. Like, does it need to be personal this? What is going on and what choice have we got here? So I kind of think that's been helpful for me in terms of the kind of the mindset I bring to,
Yeah.
I guess, the leads.
And that phrase you just used then is super powerful, isn't it? Depersonalize. And because the opposite is really damaging if you
Oh,
start to personalize it.
absolutely.
And I wonder, yeah, I wonder if that is, I'm just thinking out loud about how under stress, I wonder if that is a natural thing to attack personally. Not to make it about me, but I see my son's only 11. But if you push him and anger him or whatever, he'll go for you as an individual rather than the situation. He's very switched on as well, so he says some pretty nasty things to me about
Mhm.
a paper doctor, not a real doctor. Good luck with your picture book, all all that stuff.
Love that.
Yeah, well, he ain't got his own book, has he yet? No.
Not yet.
But no, let's talk about you some more. So the next Fast Friends question is really interesting because it says, "What do you value most in a friendship?" So
Okay.
tell us about your best friends and what you value in them.
Okay, so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, um, yeah, this reveals more about what you value and what you hope you give as a friend, as well as what you perhaps want back.
Right.
And so when I thought about it, I thought I really like the balance of genuine compassion, someone who is compassionate to me, who show me care, but with a bit of irreverent, I can't say the word,
Yeah.
like humour, right?
Okay.
Humour. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it. So actually, the balance of actually holding me seriously, but us not taking ourselves seriously. And I think
Nice.
that's what I really value. Someone who can show me care, can show me compassion, can show me concern, but also can really make me laugh and can be really kind of silly and naughty together. And I think that is what I really value in friendship. And I think that's what I hope I give to others.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? What what has to happen, do you think, in a friendship for that to be allowable or doable?
Um,
It's tricky, isn't it?
yeah, I think you need to genuinely care about the other person, and I
Yeah.
think your motive and your intention needs to be about the other person being okay. And I think you need to. This is the hard bit, right? Is about like sometimes it's not always about your needs; it's about their needs, and
Yeah.
being able to stop and pause. Um, and again, it's like listening, isn't it? It's like listening to what is this person needing, what is this person wanting, what would be most helpful to this person, and can I remove myself from my own needs in that?
Yeah, that's really, there's two things in there. There's almost the phrase that was going through my mind then, I don't know who said this, but potentially kindness, like being like direct is an act of compassion because you care so much. I mean, this is the Kim Scott stuff, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
you
Uh-huh.
care so much that you won't allow a good friend of yours to continue with a negative path of behavior or whatever because you care that much. Um, but then the other thing you said then, which I think is really important, is, and we do this, I guess, really well as coaches, is understanding what the other person needs in that moment. And when we mean moment, we don't mean a single conversation. It could be within that moment of the same conversation. I find myself, I don't know if it's purposeful. I think it might be now, but I don't know if it was before. But if we did that, if we use that kind of distinction between humour and seriousness, I definitely find a balance of humour first and then seriousness is almost like, I don't know, you create the safety to then be more challenging. Sounds like I'm doing that manipulatively now, though. I'm going to make you laugh, and then I'm going to tell you something really bad. Interesting.
I think it's connection though, isn't it? It's connection. It's about like and there's ignition there, isn't there? There's the what is going to, I don't know, bring this person like joy, or what's going to bring this person truth, or what's going to bring this person help. And actually, you're really observing and thinking actually
Yeah.
what's the most helpful thing.
I won't be able to remember the types of conversation, but I've started a launch pad for the next book about types of conversation and how
Oh,
you have to. You probably know more than me. You have to get a sense of what type of conversation they want to have, because you can get that quite wrong, can't you? Like you can say, "So how are you?" "Oh, I've had such a really tough week, and I'm not sure about." So anyway, let's crack on with today's action points. And it's like, did you not hear? Then they want to have an emotional conversation if that's a type, and you've launched into a logistical one. Is there something in that?
oh, huge. I am absolutely obsessed about purposeful dialogue. And actually, do we have our toolkit of the different types of conversation that are going to support? So we talked about contracting conversations. They are a very specific type of talk, and there's a skill to that. But that's a very different skill from an action planning conversation, or an exploration of possibility conversation,
Yeah,
or a focus on results conversation. And so there is something, I think your book will be brilliant, because I think there's something there about, can we name, just like we do for meetings, what is this? What does it need to do? What are
yeah,
its kind of critical factors? How do
yeah.
we need to do it? There's rules of engagement, and actually
Love
knowing
that.
that you can't merge them, you can't mess with this. It's, there's a beautiful intention in it that
Yeah,
enables them to work. Yeah, I agree.
I am literally obsessed with you. That idea of rules of engagement as well. If you had a shared understanding, that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you could get, I mean, we talk about a shared language across like teaching and learning, but there was a shared leadership language within your organization. My line manager could say, "Chris, we need to have an action planning meeting," and I understood the rules of engagement there. Or, Chris, actually, to be honest, I think today I probably need to have whatever else type of conversation it was. We always get that kind of lump in your throat when they say, "We need to have a difficult conversation with you today." Okay, well,
Unnecessary conversation. So the reframing of that language really, really crucial.
yeah,
So I often talk to leaders about actually what do you want to call these conversations? It takes
yeah,
away the negativity. So crucial conversations.
there we go.
So like I've done quite a lot of work with different schools around like how do we talk to each other? Like, what does it look like? What underpins it? What does this look like in terms of our values? And actually, like you say, you bring that, it's contracting again.
Yeah,
This is what it looks like. You put language to it, because I always say it's like an accelerant. It enables like things to be accessible to people,
yeah,
and it's not then exclusive just to the top.
yeah.
It's open to everyone. It's really, really significant and
And
really
to link
inclusive.
back to the previous launchpad, potentially with those planned conversations, you make them less challenging because everyone understands the rules of engagement.
Absolutely, it's fair and
Yeah,
it's equitable,
yeah,
because then people can, because basically you're saying to people, this is the discipline that we are needing here,
yeah.
and it depersonalizes, because if you've got people with biases
Mm,
towards, I don't know, like social contracting or action planning or possibility, there's no embarrassment because everyone knows how they need to be.
yeah.
Like and you remove frustration, because we all bring a different thing to the table. But if everyone understands this is what this is,
Mm.
brings safety. I
Well,
think it's crucial.
I had to look at the screen now. I'm completely lost where I even am in this podcast because I'm so involved. Well, I know we're joking, but sadly, we got to talk about this thing a bit sad now. So
Okay,
your
go on.
second ignition point,
Yeah,
yeah, it says the death of your parents.
yeah.
So tell us about why that might have changed you in some way rather than the obvious.
Well, I think that I think with a lot of people, when you go through something that is that's tough, or that is challenging, or that that really kind of rocks you to your core, you do find out who you are.
Mm.
And I think I think what that did for me was it really opened my confidence.
Right.
Because I think, and I'm not sure, because lots of things were probably happening in terms of opportunities, but I think it really kind of made me know who I am. And it kind of gave me, we use that word permission, it gave me a permission that, I've survived this, I've got through this,
Right.
I'm okay, I'm out the other side. And I think those experiences, although they can, I'm not kind of belittling these situations for other people, but for me personally, what it did, it said to me, look, you've got this, you've got resilience, you've got an ability to come out the other side. And I think that was really significant, just personally for me,
Yeah.
to actually trust myself as well, to trust myself to, get myself in different circles, to speak to who I am, to genuinely be my authentic self, which
Yeah.
I think is something that I'm learning to be.
Yeah.
Just to trust myself and be me, and that enables other people to feel comfy, which I think is really significant.
Well, again, I mean, for anyone to be able to take positives out of something so painful is, credit to you. And I think, I guess that speaks to your. I always find this interesting in that, if you've done any coaching, hopefully you become good at self-coaching, don't you? And
Yeah,
suddenly you start using some of the techniques that you would, you're almost giving yourself the advice you would give to someone else. And that idea of, okay, yeah, that stimulus has happened, and there's lots of very understandable responses, but you do get control over the response. And if you can come out with something positive, in the non-picture book, which I started trying to read to my son, he couldn't even last 3 pages. I talk about, because the premise of the book is that there's confidence and then there's self-efficacy, which is like task-specific confidence.
yeah,
And it can be quite overwhelming to think that you have self-efficacy for everything. Self-efficacy for running a Zoom call, and then self-efficacy for dealing with, bereavement.
yeah,
Towards the end of the book, not to, I suppose it does give it away, but there's a chapter called The Big Three. And I was thinking, God, this is overwhelming. How could anyone not feel like this is undoable, unachievable to be good at to be confident in every single possible thing you could ever do? So I came up with this idea, and it's not probably nothing's new, is it? But a reframing maybe of this idea that there are probably three key confidences that if you can manage, if you can master those, they unlock all the others. So one of them is a simple kind of influencing agency. That if you truly believe my actions have an impact, then that's good. The
yeah,
opposite is dangerous when you think, well, why bother? Because I can't affect anything. The next one, which I think is fascinating for me and a journey I had to go on, is I call it learning efficacy. In that I'm very, very, very confident that I can learn anything because I know how to learn,
yeah,
and I've got lots of things that I didn't know and now I know. So that gives me a confidence to, given enough time, to achieve anything.
yeah,
The one that I want to talk about though is that the third one I came up with. This again, Bandura did some work on this idea of coping efficacy.
yeah,
So the ability that you are confident to cope. And that sets you up for life because if you've got a confidence that you can cope with anything, then it doesn't soften the pain or the whatever's happening with you in that moment. But like you suggested, the fact that you've got through it gives you confidence that you could get through other tough stuff. Does that resonate at all?
absolutely. I actually think they're the building blocks of resilience.
Yeah.
So you've got a concrete example. I've been through it, therefore I trust that I can get through it again. Your coping aspect. I might not be able to do it now, but I absolutely believe that I've got the tools, the strategy, the people, the resource
Yeah.
that means I can work this out. It's a big growth mindset, right?
Yeah, it is.
And actually, I'm anchored to who I am and what matters to me, and therefore I trust that this matters. So I think that's really good. So as you were talking about that concept of self-efficacy and linked to confidence, and I would link it to self-trust.
Right.
Do I trust myself in this situation? Um, these are your building blocks. I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And I love 3. I love the number 3.
There you go. Everyone has a 3, yeah. I think we're talking about my son a lot, so I'll just do one more story that is related. But he's a funny one in that I was talking to him about, and when he's in the mood, he will listen to me, and I feel like I just got to at least say it to him, you know. So I was boring him about the book, and I was going through those 3 efficacies. And a long time, it was not a long time, about 5 years ago, he was involved in an accident at home, and various sort of intensive care, and a brick-built shed basically collapsed on the family, and him and my daughter were really badly hurt. My wife twisted her ankle, and then I managed to kind of get away pretty much scot-free. But he now cites that as a reason to cope with anything. And I'm pleased that he can find some humour in it, because he'll say something like someone will say to him, "Oh, Lawson, oh my God, your knee looks terrible." He goes, "Well, the house didn't fall on me." You know, in his mind, anything less than a house falling on him, he can cope with. So yeah, that's a mildly amusing.
That's like his identity as well, isn't it? It's like, this is how I identify. I identify as someone who's faced that challenge and come through the other end and other side. You can lean on that, can't you? You can lean on it and think, I've been there before, I'll be there again. It's all right. I think you've got a wise son.
Well, maybe, yeah. We won't go into it now because I'll start crying, but I sadly was the reason for the accident.
Okay.
So I went through some proper dark times.
Okay.
Trying to own that more than I should have, probably. Had some counselling and all that stuff. So, hilariously, got this tattoo about, remember, it was like, it's about kind of perspective.
Oh, I love that.
So it's basically, when you look at it, most people say, oh, it's a big dot in a box. And it's like, well, hang on, don't focus on the dot. The amusing story is, of course, I got that to help me get through the pain of the accident. But now my son's fine, and I've bloody got this tattoo for the rest of my life. So it's like,
you gave permission to release that.
I should have got bloody henna or something. Not
it's a Sharpie.
A Sharpie. I'm on top of my wife. Don't worry. There'll be more tough times when you can use that tattoo.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a lot.
Well, it's nice to got you to start it. Okay, let's get stuck into the second launch pad, because this is very linked, and I don't think we've done this by design, but we have been talking around this theme today, which is very smart of us. So this is, I guess it was at the time, and of course all these launch pads are my thinking at that time. Now, hilariously, and another person who we're linked to, who's got an enormous brain, Catherine Morgan. Oh my God, what?
Yeah, we've got a lot of time for her, right?
We've got a lot of time for Catherine Morgan, and she shuns away from the limelight. So you might have to go looking for her a bit deeper if you want to connect with her. But she, since looking at this, did what she normally does and asked a few searching questions. And there is a version 2 of this going to be in the next book, which I think is a bit better. But this is still pretty good, I suppose. I was thinking about this idea of, I get asked a lot, of course, to simplify things. And I try not to be that sort of grumpy old man and say, well, it's complex, tough. You have to do all the thinking that I've done. Because they do generally want, I've started calling it like a gateway. Like, give me just a simple way of getting into this so that and then I'll go a bit deeper myself. So I started thinking about change. And I started thinking that this idea of, if you were to break change down into really small bits, I wonder whether the first thing is the intention. You've got to want to change. Fine. And then there's linked to now this idea of acknowledgement. So you have to acknowledge the thing that needs to change. So I broke that down then into sort of acknowledgement. In the first thing you need to do is to become aware of it. And, this was probably a teaching and learning or leadership lens, but it may be that you become aware of the thing that you need to improve through self-reflection. It may be that your coach guides you through that reflection. It may be you've observed either a video of yourself or a peer, or you've seen a model of excellence. You thought, oh, God, I'm not quite there yet. It may be like lots of us, and certainly for teachers, you've had some feedback where someone has said, you need to change this, or did you realise you... I had a lesson observation once when I was a trainee where someone made me aware that I clicked the top of a pen 78 times in one lesson. Of course, I was doing it, so I couldn't change it. But yeah, awareness, feedback, and then of course study. But I think there's another bit to acknowledgement that just because you've become aware of it, and this works particularly well for feedback, is that someone can tell you you need to improve it. But if you don't accept that as a truth, then it goes no further, does it? Um, so for me, if you're in a leadership position or you're training teachers or you're giving feedback to anyone, when you highlight an area of need, you have to try and make it as objective as possible. I think people probably naturally reject subjective things or feelings. It's easier to reject those, isn't it? I think if you can make people aware of the impact, you know, things. I think if you accept that the behaviour you have has a really serious impact, you're more likely to change. There's something about involvement, both in the identification of the problem, certainly in the problem solving bit. Yeah. And this is potentially where improvement goes slightly wrong, and probably more likely with the younger teachers, ECTs, this idea that there's a feeling that they don't have the experience or the expertise to self-diagnose. I don't think we're suggesting they do, but certainly it should be a collaborative partnership, rather than this is what I think you should do, and so therefore it's set in stone. And then the last thing is support. So far for tracking the model, this idea of I want to improve, I become aware of something I need to improve, and I fully accept that it is worth improving. The next one in my mind is as broad as learning and as
Mm.
well as learning, in that there's a suggestion that the reason you're not doing it as well as you should be is that you don't know how to do it. And let's forget about things like motivation and that at the minute. Just pretend that we're all in. So there's
Yeah.
the learning thing. But in my mind, that learning is a fairly static thing. So I don't know. Let's give an example. I always want to get better, so I always skip through that first bit. I was made aware by someone that my delegation was not very good or effective, and they walked me through some examples of how I delegated in the past, and so that allowed me to accept it. 'Cause I thought, oh God, yeah, you are right. That is how I do it. They then talked about the impact that had, and they even gave me some verbal feedback from people I had delegated to. So I almost had to accept it because it wasn't from this person's frame; it was concrete. So then I just went and learned about delegation, and it was as simple as right, read some books on delegation. I didn't even realise that it was so complicated and that there were different steps to it and all that stuff. So by the end of that, I thought, right, I've got a much clearer vision on what it should be like. And then, of course, the trickiest bit is this idea of deliberate practice. When we talk about deliberate practice, I think we've got to be careful not to uh, kind of sort of conflate it with purposeful practice, or people sort of say, well, I'm going to go and try and do that better. That's great. But if we look at a kind of purist model of deliberate practice, there's this idea of, right, a clear focus. Fine. For me, it was delegation. I then went and tried to get better at it. But the bit that turns it into deliberate practice in my mind is that I then got feedback from the individual and I reflected before deciding what to change next. And of course, that doesn't have a finite time frame to it. I am still deliberately practicing my delegation. I don't do it as often as I used to do, so I don't have an opportunity. But every time I do it, I go in thinking, right, what am I going to do differently? And then get some feedback. Anyway, why did this one resonate with you, Liz?
Um, I am really, really obsessed with change management because I think that's basically the underpin of CPD.
Yeah,
So anything that is around learning and change, I'm really interested in. I'm really super interested in neuroscience and how what are the unlockers
yeah,
and what are the behavioural changes that we can be really deliberate around. So when I read about this, I really enjoyed it's not about willpower, it's about readiness for change and that idea of actually what is going to, I think the word unlock the
Mm.
belief that this is going to make a difference, that this is important enough for me to put my energy, my time, my resource into it, and
Yeah.
have the impact. And I really enjoyed in your on your page this idea of actually it needs to be evidence, so it can't be wishy washy. It needs to be absolutely secure. And as I read it, it really made me think of um, a great book, Tara Swart et al., around neuroscience of leadership. And
Right.
I use her model for a lot of the design that we do around leadership development. So she talks about raise awareness,
Right.
like, and that's your key there about how are you going to realize that this is a thing? How are you going to know that it's something you care about? Then she talks about focus attention. So you need to tell your brain that this deeply, deeply matters,
Yeah.
that you are going to be seeing it everywhere, you're going to be aware of it in your environment. Then she talks about deliberate practice, so using those points that you just talked about. But she also then talks, and I love this because I care about this partnership idea, therapeutic partnership. So
Ooh.
who is going to join you in
Yeah.
this change? Who is going to be your support team around this change? And so this idea of actually like professional development and leadership development being underpinned by this deep understanding of how we change and what
Yeah.
is going to enable us, I love. And so as I read this awareness and acceptance, it really resonated um, with me um, and just in life as well, right? Like just making changes our disciplines. I
Yeah.
thought that was really that was really
Great.
really good. And it made me link, Chris, to the other launch pad that I didn't choose, but I really wanted to, around how do accepting help and
Oh,
how do you get people to kind of get people engage people in the helping process,
yeah.
because you know adults need the why, adults need the so what,
Yeah.
adults need the pain and the dissonance of, oh God, you need to change that. There's
Yeah.
something here. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And that helping thing, I think, is funny as well because, like, one of my personal biases, which I don't know where it comes from. I don't remember having any childhood trauma about this, but I don't like bothering people,
Uh-huh.
and that's where the delegation link is. That I don't delegate very well because I don't like bothering people. Um,
So,
but actually, someone reframed it for me once, where they said, "Do you realize how much people like supporting other people?"
no.
I was like, "Well, no. Like, and of course they, in a clever way, they said, "Do you like helping people?" I said, "I love it. It's the reason I got into teaching. I love helping people." Right. Well, do you think would you think it's different for other people then? And so actually, I've started, asking for help more often, and you only got to do it a couple of times and see the benefit. I mean, it's a reciprocal thing, isn't it? I get help, they get a buzz. I guess you got to be a bit careful. Anyway, we are running out of time, so let's do the last one because, well, again, I don't think this is going to be particularly long because it's about what you could be better at. So, but so for the last Fast Friends question, Liz chose, what personal quality do you feel you need to develop the most? What are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for patience,
Okay.
and I'm going to go for like, I think we engage a lot around coaching, don't we? And I think in a coaching conversation, I am patient and I listen. And in my wider work, I bring a lot of urgency and a
Right.
lot of frustration, and I'm like, yeah, I've got it. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. So I would love to be able to slow myself down, to remove frustration that I sometimes feel, and be more patient to work at the different paces that everyone works at, because I like to work at an exceptionally fast pace. I
Mm.
think fast, I finish people's sentences, I'm already there. It's not compassionate, it's not kind, and the risk is that I stop people wanting to contribute. It's not my intention, but it is my impact.
Yeah.
So that is what I am constantly trying to work on. I got it.
Yeah.
Slow it down, let people step in. I
Oh,
can do it in coaching. I need to do it I'd like to do it in my general conversation.
well, I mean, already. I mean, I love that idea that it's not my intention, but it is my impact. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's a whole nother conversation around, yeah, that. But have you kind of thought about why you're able to do it in a coaching situation and not anywhere else?
I don't know. I'm really interested in that. I think that I wonder if it's that rules of engagement. I wonder if it's that I understand my role, and so
Yeah.
there's an absolute clarity in what that's about. And when I'm coaching, it's absolutely about the other person.
Mm,
Full stop. I'm creating a space. I'm holding a space. My motive is for them. And maybe in other conversations, it's more about me and what I need and my priorities
yeah.
and you know it's an intellectually stimulating space, right? So I do wonder whether it's about that.
Yeah. And I wonder if
Um,
looping back to that idea of naming conversation types, that would be an interesting strategy, wouldn't it? If I told you, Liz, can we have this type of conversation? Would you then be able to put yourself in a different mode?
I think so. I think what I do is I get my toolkit out, and so
Yeah,
I know that the way I regulate myself is I make notes or
yeah,
I scribble and I capture my thoughts
yeah.
in that, and that helps me discipline myself to then share when it's appropriate. Or
I
I
was
might
just,
self talk.
yeah, I was just giggling then in my head about, I could hear you saying this to me because I don't know why, but for me, something I've kind of been watching you do when we've met and uh, aspired to, I suppose, is you almost outwardly um, setting the parameters or almost telling people what you need. So in my mind, I could hear you saying to me, Chris, I want to talk to you about something, and what I need from you is I need you to just listen, to really think about it. Do you know what I mean? Almost you're telling me how
Yeah,
to behave. Is that a
yeah,
thing?
yeah, it's an absolutely thing. Absolutely thing. And yeah, what would most help me it would be
Oh,
if you
yeah.
could, so that it would really support me if. So I'm naturally not great at asking for help, but
Right.
as you said that to me, it
Yeah.
makes made me wonder. Actually, maybe I'm better at asking for help than I realise.
Mm.
That brings me safety. It brings me safety because it does two things. It enables me to be at my best,
Yeah.
but it also pre-apologizes.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that. Free apologies as well.
yeah.
Christmas.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, yeah, I do that all the time. Like, what? Please, could you? Would you do this? It's invitational. It gives
Yeah.
everyone a bit of a job, and then I'll say, what would help you? What would you like me to do? And that can feel weird to some people, but you know it's helpful. So,
Right. Well, I know you were hesitant, but we're going to have to do a version two of this because we've got more to talk about. So next year, you have to come back on.
all right, super
Um,
kind of you. Thank you.
how can people connect with you or the work that you're doing? Is there any way they can do that?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is currently the space that I kind of live in
Yeah.
terms of social media. I'm at Transform Trust. Um, there's a website there. That's probably the best place.
Yeah.
I love to connect. I love to learn, and I love people to expand me. So just total invitation to connect and just to drop in. And I love meeting and connecting with people. So
Amazing.
that would be beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
Well, stick it on the bill that I owe you. Thanks for your time and thanks to everyone else for listening. And yeah, I will see you at the next one.
Thank you.